Right now, above your head, there are roughly 18,000 active satellites in orbit around this planet. More than half of them belong to one company. Not one country, not a coalition. One privately held American company, controlled by one man, operating over 10,800 spacecraft, more than every other satellite operator on Earth, combined. Every government agency, every national space program, every telecom company, every competitor. Add all of them together, and SpaceX still has more. Slow. There is no precedent for this, not in the history of spaceflight and arguably not in the history of infrastructure. No single private entity has ever controlled this large a share of a domain that entire nations depend on. And here is the part that turns a business story into something else entirely. In February 2022, 4 days after Russian forces crossed into Ukraine, that network came online over a war zone. It is still there. Ukrainian military systems run on it, which means a private company's operational decisions now sit somewhere inside the conduct of a European war. This is not a story about satellites. It is a story about what happens when critical infrastructure ends up in private hands faster than anyone builds the rules to govern it. Start with what Starlink actually is, because the numbers do not behave like normal numbers. A traditional communications satellite sits in geostationary orbit, around 35,000 kilometers up. One satellite covers an enormous area. It is expensive, it lasts 15 years, and the signal takes a noticeable moment to make the round trip. Starlink does the opposite. Small satellites, roughly 550 kilometers up in low Earth orbit. Each one covers a tiny footprint and moves fast across the sky. To provide continuous coverage, you need thousands of them, handing your connection off from one to the next, constantly. That was considered economically impossible until SpaceX made launching cheap enough to do it. Today, the constellation serves over 9 million active customers across more than 70 countries. Residential plans start around $50 a month. In 2025, Starlink generated roughly $11.4 billion, about 61% of SpaceX's total revenue. Starlink is no longer the side project that funds Mars. It is the business, and it is not finished. SpaceX has indicated plans for roughly 15,000 satellites by the end of 2031. The gap is not closing, it is widening. It is worth being precise about why nobody stopped this, because the honest answer is that nobody was in a position to. There was no rule against it. Orbital slots and radio spectrum are coordinated internationally, but there is no global authority that caps how many satellites a single operator may own. The system was designed in an era when launching anything was so expensive that the question never came up. SpaceX solved reusable rockets. Once you can land a booster and fly it again, the cost per launch collapses, and with it, the barrier that had kept orbit scarce. Competitors exist. Amazon has a constellation in development. OneWeb operates a smaller network. China is building its own mega constellations. But every one of them is measured in hundreds or low thousands, against Starlink's 10,800 and climbing. And this is the part most coverage misses: the advantage compounds. SpaceX launches its own satellites on its own rockets. Competitors must buy launches, frequently from SpaceX. Your primary rival being your only affordable supplier is not a normal market condition. For the first 2 years, this was a business story. Then it became something governments could not ignore. Starlink has operated continuously in Ukraine since the 28th of February 2022, 4 days after the invasion began. When terrestrial networks were destroyed or jammed, terminals restored connectivity almost immediately. The military implications were obvious to everyone. drone operations, reconnaissance, coordination between units. Modern warfare runs on data links, and Starlink provided a data link that was extraordinarily difficult to take out. You cannot destroy a network of thousands of satellites the way you can destroy a radio tower. By 2026, roughly 3 million Ukrainian subscribers were on Starlink direct-to-cell service through the operator Kyivstar, a layer that does not even require a dish. Slow. And this is where it stops being a technology story. Because a network that can be switched on can also be switched off. Coverage can be geographically limited. Service terms can change. These are ordinary commercial decisions for a private company. And in this specific context, ordinary commercial decisions carry consequences that are not ordinary at all. Whether any such decision has ever been made, and under what circumstances, has been the subject of competing public accounts and disputed reporting. What is not disputed is the structural fact underneath it. The capability exists. It sits with a private operator. And the governments depending on it have no formal mechanism to compel anything. That is the fact that changed European policy. The European Union's response is called IRIS², Infrastructure for Resilience, Interconnectivity and Security by Satellite. 10 billion euros. A multi-orbit constellation combining medium and low Earth orbit. Initial services targeted for 2029 with fuller capability toward 2030. And around 290 satellites. Sit with that number for a moment. 290 against 10,800. Starlink has launched that many satellites in a matter of weeks. So on the raw metric, constellation size, this is not a competition. It is not close, and it is not intended to be. Which raises the obvious question. Why spend 10 billion euros on something that cannot win? The answer is that Europe is not trying to win. It is trying to stop needing permission. IRIS² is a multi-orbit design, which means its medium Earth orbit satellites can maintain a connection with far fewer handovers than a low-orbit constellation requires. Fewer satellites, more stable links, and, critically, it is government-controlled infrastructure rather than a commercial service subject to a private company's terms. In early 2026, the EU's Commissioner for Defence and Space, Andrius Kubilius, confirmed that IRIS²'s military K-band frequencies had been brought into service, enabling government provision. He described it as demonstrating the value of the public-private partnership model and said he had asked partners to accelerate the work. Ukraine has already requested access. The clearest statement of what is actually motivating this came from Spain. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, announcing a national fund for sovereign satellite communications compatible with IRIS², described Ukraine's dependence on Starlink using a single word: servitude. That is not the vocabulary of procurement. It is the vocabulary of sovereignty. And it tells you how the question is being framed inside European governments. Spain is not alone. Poland has committed to building its own satellites. Germany has a MIL-SATCOM program scheduled for 2027, launching, notably, on a SpaceX rocket. Eutelsat has announced plans for a 528 satellite constellation on top of its IRIS² commitment. The strategic logic is not that Europe expects to match SpaceX's scale. It is that a country which cannot communicate without a foreign private company's cooperation has surrendered something it may not be able to get back. Whether 10 billion euros and 290 satellites is enough to change that is genuinely uncertain. And it is worth saying plainly that serious people disagree about it. Because there is a real counter-argument, and it deserves to be stated properly. Starlink worked. When Ukraine's infrastructure was being destroyed, no government network was available to replace it, and no state program could have been stood up in time. A private company delivered at scale, within days. That capability did not exist because a committee planned it. It existed because a company took an enormous commercial risk on reusable rockets and mass-produced satellites, and was right. Concentration is a real problem, but so is the alternative, where nobody builds the thing at all, because no government is willing to fund a project with that failure probability. Slow. And there is a version of this where the concern is overstated. Competitors are launching. Amazon's constellation is coming. China's is coming. Europe's is coming. The current concentration may be a snapshot of an early market rather than a permanent condition. 10 years from now, this may look less like a monopoly and more like a first mover that got a decade's head start. Or it may not. That is genuinely an open question, and anyone telling you otherwise is guessing. Here is what is not in dispute. Roughly 6 out of every 10 active satellites above your head belong to one company. That company's network is embedded in the operations of an ongoing war. Its parent went public in June 2026 at a valuation of around $1.75 trillion. And multiple sovereign governments, with functioning space agencies, real budgets, and centuries of institutional experience, have collectively concluded that they cannot rely on it and are spending billions to build something they already know will be smaller. The thing about infrastructure is that you never notice it until the question of who controls it becomes urgent. Roads, ports, undersea cables, the electrical grid, all of it invisible right up until it isn't. Orbit just became infrastructure. And we are right now in the narrow window where the rules for it are still being written by whoever happens to be standing there when the question finally gets asked.